Today in the Smuggler's Room, we're working on part 6 of our Star Wars room build. And we're going wild for floor mats because we're going to use them as cushions for our couch. Seriously, floor mats make great cushions. That's coming up. What's up, you awesome geeks? I'm Brian and welcome to the Smuggler's Room. This week, this chubby geek is working on part 6 of our Smuggler's Room build. And we're addressing one of the aspects of this room that intimidates me the most. It's the crash couch, or the Falcon style bench, or the Degassing table bench, or whatever bench you want to call it. This section of the room has plagued me with uncertainty. It's one of those spaces that I just have been afraid to really tackle because I'm afraid it won't look the way I want it to. You want to know how long it's been? My father and I built the actual frame of the bench in October of 2015. Yeah, seriously. We built this prior to ever launching the channel, and I just let it sit and sit and sit. So that's it. It's 2020. We're diving in head first, and we're going to tackle the hardest part of the room, in my opinion. Fortunately for all of us, there's an amazing group on Facebook right now where they are building a lot of these crash couches and the Degassing table. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sure someone will let me know if I'm not. But it's the table that you see in the Falcon, the chess table with the monsters that they play on. One of the builders in particular, Conrad Fleming, has a custom-sized booth for his Wandering Wampa tiny home, and it's incredible. He was also kind enough to put up his Falcon seat patterns for the group. Thank you so much, Conrad. So, the plans and patterns, that's where I'm gonna start. And do yourself a favor and listen to your wife, or your spouse, or your dog, or whoever it is in your home that is smarter than you are. They'll save you from diving in and cutting a bunch of stuff that actually is not going to fit in the space that you have because it's unique to you. And then you have to start over. Yeah, that happened. Anyway, my bench is a unique size for the space, so we're gonna have to make some adjustments. The patterns themselves worked for the most part, but laying them out showed me where I'm going to have to create custom pads for my unique bench. And yes, all those little tiny holes and dings in the foam that's already there, our cat Bosk decided that this was a perfect place to test out the strength of his claws. Don't worry, I'll have a little tip on how we can fix all those holes in the next episode. Okay, enough rambling, let's start by cutting some patterns. Choosing what material to make these pads out of was actually the biggest consideration, but I channeled my inner Punish props and SKS props and decided to go with EVA foam. The mat on its own is too thin for me, so I wanted to double them up. But cutting out the pattern by hand and then trying to make sure that they were matched perfectly is a really tough thing. Ideally, it would have been easier to glue them together and then cut the pattern. I know, probably makes sense to you, but I was so excited to get to cutting that I completely missed it. It was also at this time I decided to move over to the bandsaw. I'll be honest, I had always planned on using the bandsaw, but don't get discouraged if you don't have one, because you've seen all you really need is a sharp razor, a blade sharpener, and patience to get this done. I just don't have any patience, so the saw was the way for me. Now, for the rest of the patterns, I smartened up and glued full pieces of mats together, and it made things a lot easier. By the way, contact cement is your friend when working with EVA foam. Apply it to either side of your pieces, let it set long enough to just be tacky, and then carefully assemble your pieces together. You will see that there is a diamond pattern on one side of the mat, and I decided not to grind that pattern down. I really wasn't thinking it was necessary for what I was doing, and it bonded perfectly even with the pattern. So I use my router table to round over the edges. If you don't have a router table, you could use a hand router. And if you didn't have that, you could use a sanding drum on your Dremel tool. So there are many ways for you to achieve this round over. Heat sealing is another aspect you'll want to do. It helps get rid of all those pesky little fuzzies that you'll no doubt have, as well as seal the outside of the foam. Now, one aspect that I didn't show was the use of this. It's Kwik Seal. And basically what you do is you take it and apply it to the edges or anywhere on your foam pad that you might have holes or anything that you want to seal, like perhaps the seam when they join together. This will dry, you can lightly sand it, and then you can apply a sealer on the outside. As for the sealing, we chose Plasti Dip, and it was only after making a massive mess in the shop that I remembered a quick tip from Punish Props Academy, using a scrap piece of foam to create a super convenient handle to hold your piece while you spray. Okay, let's talk about my favorite subject, greeblies. And the couch bench has them. They're right in the foam. Now, in the Millennium Falcon itself, they're really specific. But since mine isn't the Falcon, I wanted to create my own and show you how you can do that. As you can see, just a piece of styrene and some random parts from my greebly bins, and you have a cool little detail. However, since we need so many, and that I want them all to be the same, I decided to make a mold. For that, we'll use some smooth-on silicone and some resin. I'm going to use a large tub of Mold Max 30 that I have on hand, but I'll list some trial size units for this episode in the description that are much cheaper, because you really won't need that much for this size of greebly. a lot of pad pieces needed for the bench, and we haven't even made the actual seat pads that you sit on, plus the custom pads we need to fill in certain spaces. Now, one of the questions we've been getting a lot is, how are those EVA foam pads going to hold up when people are sliding in and out of the bench and sitting on them? And the answer is, I don't know. But the one thing I did want is I wanted something that was at least somewhat comfortable to sit on. I didn't want to make them out of wood or make them out of rigid fiberglass or plastic, so that they were comfortable. And you can probably peel these apart, put new ones on, and then do some more weathering. We have a super long way to go to finish this bench, and it's going to be multiple parts throughout 2020 in order to achieve our goal of finishing the entire Smuggler's Room build by the end of the year. So make sure you subscribe and you hit that bell with all the notifications so you don't miss a new episode. We're going to do lights and a lot of displays and even a home for our Rancor behind the bench. But all of that will have to wait until the next time we build something out of nothing.